Ladies and gentlemen, what I'm going to try to do in the 10 to 12 minutes that are allotted to me is to highlight a very important question about freedom of travel, which we at UNWTO call travel facilitation, and its relationship with the overall travel and tourism industry, with particular focus and emphasis on the security needs of travel, which, contrary to what many assume, we in the travel and tourism industry are more keen on travel security than anybody else. And we should see that the security needs must be going hand in hand with the facilitation needs. Yesterday, for those of you that were with us, I identified three main challenges that we have been asked by our General Assembly, by our members, to focus on in terms of immediate challenges. One was travel facilitation, particularly issues of visas. Two was air connectivity in particular, and connectivity in general. And three was the issue of taxes. I will concentrate today only on the first one and maybe touch a little bit on the second one, which is the relationship with the aviation industry, because it does connect very clearly with travel facilitation. We have been focusing on this issue at UNWTO for the last, I would say, 24 to 30 months. According to our research that we have been conducting together with our partners in WTTC and with Oxford Economics, we have issued many pieces of research that indicate the real and strong connection between travel facilitation, growth of the industry, and the consequences of that growth on economic growth, job creation, and the consequences of that. We have also developed something which is very unique, and I would advise you to, for those of you that are more interested, to look at our website and try to consult with it, which is called the Openness Index of UNWTO. This Openness Index goes from 0 to 100. 0 is the most open of all systems, and 100 is the most complicated, contrary to what some may think. And we measure the degree of openness and friendliness of each visa regime and visa system in every country that is willing to do that, and we place them within that rank. Now, the most interesting results of this is that the world average is 62%, which means that 62% of the people of the world need prior traditional classical visas stamped on their passport before they move from one place to another. 2/3 almost of the world population. 19% of the world population are able to enter destinations without visas, only 19%. And 16% can receive visas upon arrival. This is general, and this is what our index is indicated. It's a very complex issue, but we have managed now to deal with it with rather ease and facilitation. The report shows that the most open region in the world, which ranks at only 12%, which means that only 20% of the population of the world needs visa to enter any of the countries of that region, is Southeast Asia. The 10 ASEAN countries in Southeast Asia are the most open region in the world, followed by East Africa, the Caribbean, and Oceania. Some of the most complicated regions in the world are Central Africa, North America, and many North American destinations, not only the United States, but Canada as well. Now, if that may look to you like it's not very good news, there is a good aspect to it, that only in 2008, which is less than 10 years ago, actually 8 years ago, this average of 62% stood at 77%, which means that we have made great progress, more than 10 points in less than 8 years. But we still are very way ahead. Let me also review with you a little bit of the results before I discuss with you some of the principal issues that we need to address. A total of 50 destinations in the last 8 years, from 2008, which is when we started to tabulate and document all of this data, More than 50 destinations significantly facilitated visa process for citizens of over 30 or more countries. We are measuring the actual facilitation if it is for more than 30 countries. If it is less than that, it becomes just a bilateral tit-for-tat kind of agreement. But a deliberate policy, in our definition, must include at least 30 countries where you do some progress. So 50 destinations did that between 2010 and 2014, only in the last 4 years. They either changed their visa policies from visa required to electronic visa, or visa upon arrival, or even no visa. Any movement in that direction is tabulated in our database. We have the largest database of visa information that can exist in the world. Every country in the world deposited its visa application form, its procedures, and we have monitored also the friendliness and the flexibility and the clarity of the information that are displayed on the website. We have dedicated a special department to do that. Now, although there is clear progress, as you can see, there is much that remains to be done, especially when we talk about facilitating travel to some of the most significant and effective emerging markets. Yesterday, I shared with you the growth rates in China, Russia, Brazil, 26 to 30% growth in the last 3 years, year by year. This year, maybe Russia had slowed a little bit, and even China slowed a little bit because of the high rates of growth in the last 2 to 3 years, yet still they are way, way above as sort markets from any other market growth. We need to make sure that we do not act naively and so unintelligently vis-a-vis these markets. What we have done at UNWTO is embark, in addition to the data that we are collecting and the reports that we're disseminating, on a very, very aggressive advocacy and awareness campaign. I have personally met 64 presidents and prime ministers in the last 2.5 years and personally delivered a letter and a consequent report explaining to them what the consequences of this is and what the losses that they are doing. I will take off my written text and share with you a little story that I had last year in one of the major big Asian countries. I was late, together with the delegation that was with me, in coming to meet with the president of that country. And being late in seeing a president makes you very nervous. But it was the traffic and it was the responsibility of the host country. Yet, I'm not sure the president knew that. So when I was there, I was a little bit uncomfortable and had to apologize so much. He was so friendly, so nice, he made me feel at ease. The whole meeting went extremely well, the first 10, 15 minutes. Then at the end, while shaking hands with me, he said, "Can you give me 2 advices that if we do, we can make things better?" I said, "Open your visa regimes, open your skies." He looked at me and said, "Who told you that our visas are complicated? They're not complicated. You've been fed the wrong information." And suddenly the man turned to become a very nervous man, defending his system. So I said, "I'm sorry, Mr. President, if you feel so, if you really believe so, that's exactly what I wanted to make sure of. So don't be too upset about this." And when I went out, the Minister of Tourism of that country was with me, and I told him, we may have ended the meeting on a very bad note. He said, yes, he was very tense and very nervous. After that, a week after that, that same minister was attending the ITB in Berlin with me. And I saw him coming from a distance with a big smile and wanting to hug me. So when I hugged him, I said, "Well, you're still minister." He said, "Yes, and you won't believe what happened." I said, "What happened?" He said, 2 days after that meeting, in a cabinet meeting, the president was presiding on that cabinet meeting. And then when he was given the agenda, he said, "Before we look into this agenda, I want to put everything aside. I want to know the real story about visas. Are you telling me the right story or not?" He asked the Minister of Interior, he asked the security people, he asked the airport, aviation, and everything. And he said from that point on, things changed in a dramatic way because he took it into his own hand. He felt that he was personally responsible for making things better. Now, that's just a story to tell you that sometimes issues like this can only be dealt with at the top and the highest level. And that's precisely why we embarked on this campaign of awareness raising. We're trying in this campaign to achieve two things: to link visas with economic growth and with job creation. I'll give you an example. We started in Los Cabos, Mexico, when the leaders of the G20 met 2 years ago. Was it 2 years? 3 years ago. And we presented a study on the G20 economies. We proved that the G20 economies are losing by simply not implementing very simple action, as simple as make your website a little bit more friendly and clearer and more direct. As simple as that. We're not asking for more at this stage. 5.1 million new jobs could be generated if they just facilitate and improve a little bit some of their procedures. 206 billion US dollars were lost between 2010 and 2014. And we presented those results to the G20 leaders in Los Cabos in Mexico. And the result was that they added a whole paragraph in their final declaration on the need to make travel easier because of its direct connections to economic growth and to job creation. Now, my second point is, when we do this, we're always confronted with a very, very important argument that says, well, what do we do about illegal immigrants? What do we do about terrorists? What do we do about security, whether it's economic security or political and physical security? Our stand is the following: travel facilitation and friendliness on one hand and security on the other hand are not a zero-sum game. The openness on one side should not by any means mean that we are going to compromise anything that has to do with security on the other hand. As a matter of fact, security is our major concern. We cannot afford as a tourism industry to have any incident happens that may set us back. But our argument is, do we have to make life of people miserable just to prove that we are better in security? Is that better security to start with? Are we utilizing the right technological means, the right management procedures? And did we think good enough about how does a traveler, from the minute he or she decides that they want to go somewhere and apply for a visa, go to the airports and go through all what they go through, are we doing the best thing that can be done? The answer is clearly no. We have not exhausted all of that facility. Our argument has been the following: the protection of, and this is a statement that is written in the letter that I submit to all these presidents, the protection of life, health, physical, psychological, and economic integrity of tourists, providers, and members of the receiving community. In sum, tourism security is fundamental for the development of tourism sector. But tourism security should not mean that we should make people's lives miserable. It is not only security, as a matter of fact. It's about what you go through when you go from one point to another. People today are not ready to wait for 3 or 4 weeks after applying for a visa and after standing in line for hours to get an answer whether they can enter a country or not. They are not so comfortable about revealing the history of their fathers and grandfathers and mothers and grandmothers and everybody, just to say, yes, you can enter a Schengen zone or a certain country like that. What we are doing in reality is we are spending so much money in promoting a destination, and we're spending even more money in telling people don't come. It's as simple as that. And that does not make sense. It is not logical. Options and alternatives are available all over the world. If a Russian cannot come to France or to Spain, a Russian would go to Turkey. They welcome him, visa upon arrival. In Turkey, just as an example, which is a country that has achieved so much progress and advancement in tourism, receiving and growth, in 2008, the government of Turkey decided that Russian citizens can receive visas upon arrival. They still need a visa. They still have to pay for it, but they don't have to get it from Moscow or St. Petersburg or anywhere else all over the world before they come. From 1.4 million Russians in 2008 to 3.6 million Russians in 2009, in 1 year. You can see the dramatic impact of just one action like this. A Russian that wanted to take a visa prior to 2008 and still needs a visa to many countries around the world, that is living in the east side of Russia, Vladivostok, for example, will have to travel to Moscow or St. Petersburg 2 times to be interviewed. He or she will pay more money than flying from their country to Paris or Rome or London or Madrid. The same thing in China. If you're living in the west of China, you need to pay probably much more than paying from Beijing or Shanghai to come to Rome or Paris by paying from from the place you live to the consulate or destination. Many measures have been introduced now. We have made some headway with Brussels. I'm glad Pedro Artun is with us. They're beginning to listen, not just the people in charge of tourism and enterprise and economic growth now I understand it's going to be called, but even people that are in charge of security. We have also managed through our UN affiliation as UNWTO to be mandated only 2 months ago, and I think this is a very important step. The Security Council of the United Nations took a decision that we, as a UNWTO UN organization, should be mandated with the issue of security for travel. And they have allotted some funds for us to start producing manuals and guidelines on how to make travel safer. Now, we are not a security agency, but to say that tourism people are in charge of tourism security and travel security is by itself a very advanced step, because we will think about it from that perspective. People should be able to obtain a visa just as they would buy a ticket or reserve in a hotel. Why can't they do it online? Why are we still sticking to 19th century procedures in applying for visas and getting them and going through all the agony that we need to go through? It is very simple. You're either granted a visa or rejected a visa, but let's do it with dignity. This is mainly our argument. Now, let me tell you something in conclusion so that you would know that what we are discussing today is nothing new and nothing that other predecessors of ours have not discussed. Our organization, UNWTO, started as an organization that was called UNWTO, the official union of travel organization of Europe, actually, in 1929. We have documents, because I'm embarking on a publication to document the history of UNWTO, to show that when it was established in 1929 as an official organization, union of tourism offices, as they call them, because there were no ministries at the time, one of the major objectives was to facilitate travel amongst people. They realized that that was a problem way back in 1929. We're still talking about it. In conclusion, my dear friends, there are 4 points I want to leave with you in summary. 1, travel facilitation makes a big difference in how much the industry can grow and how it flourishes. 2, we have made a lot of good progress, but we still need to do much more. 3, there is absolutely no conflict, and the argument of having any conflict between security and travel facilitation is a false argument. 4, security and travel facilitation is not only about having visas being facilitated, it's also about how do you go from one point to another, how easy it is to pass through airport checks, how friendly it is, and how many smiling faces do you see along the way. These are, in short, the thoughts that I wanted to leave with you. I'll be more than happy to interact and respond to some of the questions and or remarks that you may have. I'm depending on the skill and the talent of Pedro Artun, as long as he let me leave here by 10:15, if that is possible. Thank you very much.